Thanks for tuning in to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Brought to you by Friedman International, the international campaign experts taking the pain out of your multi-market campaigns. I'm your host, Conor Byrne, and having worked with Friedman International in my previous role as a global marketing leader, I've experienced firsthand their deep level of expertise and attention to detail as the go-to experts for all international campaign needs. Now, let's get right into today's episode of That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Well, welcome back to day 2 of our Cannes roundup, but really day 1 of the festival kicked off properly today. And myself and Colin have been kind of out there seeing different things. Colin, what did you get to see today?
Well, it was a whirlwind of activity. I went to about 4 different events, slumming it on the beach, but also slumming it inside as well. A couple of really very interesting things. So one of the things I did, went along to see what the CMO of Colgate US was talking about. She was talking about how she's completely rearranged her team to cope with all the new channels out there, and how they've actually set the structure up that they only focus on jobs to be done. They don't think about budget, they just go and say what are their tasks. At the same time, they announced a partnership with Disney using their the first-party data and working with Omnicom. It's just really incredible. That was among the many releases that we've seen today.
Really interesting. I met Jerry D'Angelo today, and that episode's going to come out in a couple of weeks' time. But Jerry talked about jobs to be done as kind of the way to frame what you're trying to do, and it's a very simple thing, but some people don't do it.
It's true, but we all don't. I'm a big sinner in this department as well, but when we talk about jobs to be done, it kind of focuses the mind.
Yeah.
And Unilever are doing this in their kind of overall brand marketing planning, 20 years ago. But what happens is we tend to focus on tasks, we tend to focus on budget, we tend to focus on P&Ls, silos and so on. And in fact, at my presentation tomorrow with Nectar 360, I'm talking about silos as well.
Are you? Yeah. Well, while you were off doing that, I stopped off at Brand Innovators this morning just to have a look. And
Great.
Literally the very first presentation, I'd say about 2 minutes in, and they were talking about AI. And actually, what I'm going to do now is I met with David Tiltman earlier on, and actually David said he wasn't going to go to anything to do with AI and technology. So let's take a listen to my conversation with Dave Tiltman from WARC. David, thanks a million for joining me, and That's What I Call Marketing. Great to see you in person, meet you in person.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Listen, this is not your first Cannes rodeo.
It isn't. No, it isn't. There are people I work with who've been to like 29 or something. I'm not quite in that league, but yeah, I've been to a fair few.
So you've seen kind of a probably change over the years. Kind of what are the big changes this year?
This year, so I think there's a lot. I mean, I always say that Cannes is a reflection of where the money and where the energy is in the industry. So this year we're seeing what started last year with the retail networks coming in. So we had Amazon really come in a big way last year. Amazon are here in even greater numbers this year. And we've also got Instacart, we've got Kroger and Target. So a lot of that big, you're really feeling the impact of retail media. Lions itself has got a creators pass that it started this year, so that whole sort of creator and influencer economy is coming in a big way as well.
Yeah, which is a fascinating space. I was at a Creator IQ event in London in the start of May. It was just fascinating to hear what they're doing and what the brands are doing with them. Like, it's going to be interesting to see that evolve.
I think the other thing that's interesting that isn't here so much is, compared with previous years, is that whole conversation around purpose has sort of moved on, and I just want to be really clear, like, there is still plenty of talk about the things that matter, representation and sustainability and all those sorts of things, but that sort of obsession with purpose for purpose's sake has sort of died back a little bit, I think.
Yeah, kind of the post-COVID of it, I think.
Yes,
we were overdone, I think, of it during COVID with the Sunni piano music and...
Oh, yeah. Let's not revisit those times.
My favourite one was the collection of all the ads that were done, and it was brilliant.
It was the same. Distinctiveness went out the window. For,
everyone was helping. Listen, just before we kind of get into what you're kind of hoping and expecting this week at Cannes, tell just a bit about WARC for anyone who's watching or listening that isn't aware of WARC. Give us the overview. So WARC has been around for like 30 odd years now.
and we are. I guess we like to think of ourselves as marketing's body of knowledge.
Yeah.
And our focus is on how do you do stuff that's going to work. And so obviously we're very focused on commercial effectiveness, but there are lots of other ways things can work as well. So it's not like, there's only one way a thing can work. But we want to try and help marketers get to a place where they have more confidence that their investment is going to pay back in some way. And we do that. So classically, we've done that through our content service, which is a sort of subscription platform. So that's full of, case studies. It's full of research. It's full of best practice guidance. And that's been a sort of mainstay of a lot of the big agency networks and increasingly a lot of the sort of brand side as well. And increasingly, we've expanded. We're looking to do things that are outside of that sort of subscription, text-based content space. So we're increasingly doing what we call advisory. So that's actually helping clients in a more sort of structured, tailored way. And we also have, an emerging e-learning program. We're also, and then we're also at places like this. So we're bringing it to life. We're through podcasts, through events. So we're increasingly doing lots of different formats, and it's all with that same sort of mission, if you like, which is to help marketers do a better job. Yeah,
kind of raise the bar, I guess.
Exactly.
And I use that the advisory service where you kind of go in with the business problem, and because there's so much information work and it's very searchable, but actually then there's a few people kind of go in and dig and say, well, these type of case studies help you. It was amazing.
It's it's an opportunity and a challenge. We've got so much amazing content, but actually knowing where the gold is and the nuggets are, and knowing how to sort of recontextualize your problem or your things. There's a skill in that, and that's increasingly what we're trying to help clients with. And interestingly, it's also where we're starting to find AI is going to help. So we're not launched it yet, but in a few weeks we're going to be opening up a sort of AI service within Walk for our clients in terms of it'll be a sort of open beta. And we see that as being a new way of getting to those bits of information quicker.
Amazing. So you the idea is you go in, you kind of might put in your business challenge.
Put in your challenge, and it will return not just the content, but it will have summarized that content and told you what the sort of key takeaways are.
Amazing.
So very excited about that.
Yeah, because there is such a wealth of knowledge in work, and it is, for me, it was as always a go-to place of learning. First of all, this is a business where I think we all need to be curious. So just if you're curious about things, you can go in and learn.
Yeah.
But if you've got a business problem, somebody else has had something somewhat similar. I would worked a lot of kind of international marketing and trying to figure out how do other companies overcome the challenges of the local, global local thing? And, you'll find something there that helps, but, it's not necessarily give you the answer, but it just helps you, guides you.
We have a sort of internal sort of content approach, which we call the 3 E's. And it's basically exactly what you've just said. We call it examples, evidence, and expert guidance. They're the 3 things we try and offer. So if you've got a challenge, somebody's done something like it before. So can you find some examples of it? What is the sort of evidence-based approach that's going to help you, and what are those nuggets of information? And then there's plenty of smart people in our industry. What are they saying? What does their insight and their knowledge how can that be brought to bear on that challenge? And I think we see ourselves as very much a practitioner tool rather than a sort of academic database. We're trying to help people as they're crafting, as they're on the job, as they're building the briefs or the pitches or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and evidence. If you're talking to the C-suite, there's just there's a ton of that. In your role, you speak to an awful lot of people, marketing leaders, practitioners, professionals, researchers. And I'm always curious. I'm listening to you and going, how on earth does he stay on top of all this stuff? Because
well, I'm very lucky. I've got an amazing team. So I do. I definitely, I rely on them a lot. But I think, you said earlier that in this sector it pays to be curious, and I think it really does. And I don't know, maybe I'm just curious, but yeah. I actually really enjoy, there's always a new thing to figure out.
Yeah.
There's always a new sort of angle or idea, and whether it's in our media service where we're trying to sort of tell the story of how marketing is evolving, how marketing spend is going to new places, or whether it's through the sort of case study competitions we do, or there's always something new to learn, and I love that. That's my sort of happy place.
Dream job.
Yeah.
Then you're in the right job. Given kind of that, I guess, breadth of people that you get to speak to in your role, what are kind of some of the big challenges that you see marketers facing at the moment?
God, it's huge, isn't it? It's so big. So I'm gonna the first one, and I'm going to say this because I think it really has implications for all the other things marketers do. And it's something I'm actually talking about. We're doing quite a lot of work here in Cannes this week. So a year ago, Scott Galloway was on stage here, and he was busy saying about the era of brand is dead.
Yes, yeah.
And
R.I.P.
Brand is no longer a sort of real lever of business growth. It's all about supply chain and tech innovation. And now, fundamentally, we disagree, and we disagree for a whole bunch of reasons. And I'm not going to go through all the data and the stats here, but what it really highlights is that there is a fundamental disconnect between the way marketers view brand and the way we talk about brand and these surroundings, and the way the rest of the business views it. And the reason that's so problematic is because brand should be the absolute sort of core value that the marketing function is adding to the business.
Right.
And clearly, brand is a whole organisation. It's not just advertising. We know all of these things.
Yeah.
But marketing needs to be the discipline that really understands it and understands how to move it forward. And if we can't agree on whether or not that's a good thing, then that has so many knock-on effects to marketing's role within the organisation, within the broader business community, and clearly there are a million other things like we could talk about media. There's so much change in the media space as well. But for me, that brand issue and being able to articulate what the hell brand is and why it matters in the 21st century economy, that for me is a real fundamental one.
Do you think then even within marketing, within any, particularly larger organizations, marketing you'll have a brand team, you'll have a growth marketing team, you'll have, we sometimes don't do ourselves favors by kind of even separating that out.
Hugely agree, massively agree. So we're doing some work in the States at the moment. There'll be a white paper coming out later this year, and we've really tried to look at the latest data from the US because, just take a step back, we're always talking about Ehrenberg Bass, about Binet and Field, about all the other sort of gurus. Very few of them actually come from the US. Yeah. Very few of them are using US data, and the first thing we ever get asked whenever we present it in the US is, yeah, but that's not Australia, here. Or that's the UK, or whatever. And so we're setting out to try and fix that and go, what actually is the latest data? Now, we're working with a whole bunch of really interesting partners, but the more we look at it, the more we're finding that this distinction between brand and performance is actually unhelpful. It's a perfectly good mental model in terms of thinking, right, I've got to do this job and I have to do this job. But operationalizing it into two sort of distinct bits of work actually misses the links between the two and the codependency of the two. Yeah. And if anything, it turns brand into this weird silo that isn't accountable for business impact. And again, I mean, Jenny Romaniuk a few years ago called it the biggest own goal marketing has ever scored. It was the invention of the brand campaign. Yeah. And actually, the more I've looked at it, the more I agree with it. I can say, oh yeah, no, you've really got a point there, because it makes sense conceptually, but the way it's been operationalized is actually undermining the whole idea in the first place.
Yeah, someone said to me, performance marketing is the best piece of branding ever. Like, it's because it implies every other piece of marketing does not perform.
It's not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good quote,
isn't it? And I've even seen, just to your point, like I've seen firsthand, by investing in brand, being able to reduce the amount spent on growth, performance, whatever, lower funnel market. Like I've seen it. There's great IPA case studies. I think it's there's a brilliant EasyJet one where they managed to reduce their investment in paid search. So like the evidence is there, but we kind of don't do ourselves a whole ton of favors.
We've got a whole bunch of brands talking about this week. So we've got the team from Solo Stoves. So you remember the Snoop Dogg ad, and what hoo-ha that was. So we've got the inside story, which is really interesting, but it's not actually that scandalous at all. It's quite predictable. Yes, of course, a campaign of that nature that was trying to massively raise awareness and build out their funnel did not have like a 30-day payback window. I mean, like you'd be sort of bonkers to think it
who
would.
sold it in like that? Yeah.
But that's not to say. But then you flip it the other way and say, well, actually, that you don't want to just say, oh, well, it only has to drive awareness. It's got to be doing other things. It's just the thing we keep stumbling over is time frames. It's like time frames of payback.
Yeah.
And what the team is saying is they go, well, this thing really this really worked. It reduces our cost per acquisition, and it's and they've seen a sort of, as you would expect, a sort of real lag effect as people have sort of come into, I don't know when the stove market is, but when they've come into the stove market, and they're so they've done a complete 180 on it, and it's gone from being this sort of case study in what not to do to actually a real piece of best practice. So that's really interesting. We've also got Instacart and DoorDash both talking about how they use brand, and I personally think it's really important that we hear from those new economy players that live or die on the internet, and what brand means for them and why they invest in it, how they invest in it. Because we've got some great, we've got Guinness, we've got Heinz, we've got the
big brand-led companies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to be hearing from these other types of company if we're going to sort of really answer this challenge. Yeah,
a great example. I spoke to Lee Barnes from Intrepid Travel. He's a great story about kind of his realization of the role of brand. And I think just while we're on this topic, I think some of like the challenges with B2B marketing and brand are very, very real. A lot of B2B marketing is mind-numbingly boring.
Well,
have you got anything coming out this week on B2B?
We two things actually. So LinkedIn and Bain are presenting a piece of research on what they're calling the fear of messing up. I think it was a slightly different title, FOFU. I think it got slightly censored. But what they're saying, and I think it's absolutely sensible, is B2B brand builders have to be thinking about the broader context in which decisions are made, and how there is a sort of a real fear of downside or fear of, so it's the decisions are sort of risk adjusted. And so the more you can work to build confidence in other parts of the business that this is going to be a good investment, the better. So they've got some new data around that. So I think that's really interesting. Generally, we all want to sort of say B2B is the same as B2C, and you're still selling to people, emotion still matters, all of those things. But it is important to recognise the context in which decisions are being made, and that the decision to buy a piece of enterprise software is never going to be the same as the decision to buy milk or ketchup or toothpaste. So that's really interesting. And then the second piece that is on Thursday is again with the B2B Institute at LinkedIn, and we've done a B2B follow-up of a piece of work we did last year, which is called Promise to the Customer.
Oh, yeah.
So Promise to the Customer is a mental model introduced by B2B Institute and Roger Martin, the sort of strategy and business author. And it's really simple. It's just like, should we think of brand, as in the what in marketing we call brand, as being a promise to the customer? And if we can articulate a promise to the customer, do we see more success? And I've got to be honest, when he first came out with it, I thought, oh God, right, because promise sounded a bit too much like purpose. It was here we go again. But
changing the
just changing the letters around. But actually, we did a big piece of work on it last year. Really looked in our case study database, and the data was really interesting. And it was, and we were only looking at it at a sort of campaign articulation level, not a sort of bigger, sort of more upstream business application. But we were finding that campaigns that could articulate a promise to the customer were much more likely to report significant commercial effects. And in particular, the delta between those that did and those that didn't was much higher in low budget campaigns.
Right.
Now that immediately made us think, well, that's interesting because most B2B campaigns are low budget. So what we've done with the B2B Institute is go back, use the same methodology and look at a very distinct set of B2B campaigns, and we'll be revealing what that says this week.
Brilliant. That'll be really interesting, really interesting. I know Mark and V from Sleep and Barber love talking about the promise to the customer.
Yeah, and it's really, I think what's powerful about it is it wraps up a lot of other theories. So if you can articulate a promise to the customer that is memorable, valuable, and deliverable, then you are much more likely to be engaged in things like category entry points. You're much more likely to be thinking about emotional resonance and all those sorts of things. I think it's a really smart way of articulating a lot of the theory in a way that's palatable to people outside of marketing.
Definitely. One of the other things I know was great, and as a winner of a B2B award from WARC on the creative effectiveness ladder.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I got that in.
No, worth shouting about.
You knew about it, of course. We talked about it before.
Yeah.
Well, actually, do you know what? We were thrilled. It was work we did in India for B2B. It was really, it was different. And actually, it's really interesting, just on that, is that we had to really push against kind of the way the brand tone of voice was in all the other markets to create something that was more humorous and worked. But the creative effectiveness ladder is a wonderful tool in
Oh,
work.
great, yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I guess if people, and I know James Herman has the course and everything, so there's lots of accessibility to it. But just like if people aren't familiar with it, kind of what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, so the creative effectiveness ladder was and it's an ongoing effort to answer the question, what is effectiveness?
Right.
And it sounds like a really stupid question, but it's actually not, because sort of as I was sort of talking about earlier, marketing works in lots of different ways, and there are lots of different ways to have an impact. And clearly you want the impact you have to be the impact you need to have based on your objectives. But understanding the different ways marketing can work and the significance of the different types of impact to the commercial health of the organization is super important. And we, with James, had got a little bit sick of trying to judge like thousands of case studies, some of which report profit and price premium movements, and others like, oh, we got 1 million likes or whatever it was.
Right, yeah.
And I'm dramatizing. But so how do we actually put this into some sort of framework so people can understand all of these things are effective, but some are more commercially impactful than others? And so the creative effectiveness ladder is a hierarchy of effects. So it goes from 1 to 6. And the closer to the top you are, the more enduring and longer lasting the sort of commercial impact is. And so, yes, it captures at the base level things like, the buzz effects or short-term sales spikes, those sorts of things. And then towards the top, you're getting into movements in brand equity and then longer-term commercial gain.
Speaking of like creativity, and I know Mr. Ritson is here for his first time talking
Yeah.
about creativity, but he probably shares a slightly different view and says it's a very low impact on kind of the overall marketing picture.
So I've yet to see his final presentation, so I'm gonna slightly reserve judgment. But look, I think his point of view is actually a point of view that is perfectly reasonable. I know he wants to be like a heretical and contrarian, and that's fine. But I think what he's saying, which makes a lot of sense, is that look, if we're seeing creativity as a driver, one of several drivers of the effectiveness of your marketing communications. Now, we know plenty of studies that show it's roughly like half the impact, or it's the most significant impact that a marketer can control. He might have a slightly different take, but I'll wait and see the presentation. But if we think about that as being a driver of effectiveness in marketing communications, well, actually, there's a lot more within marketing than marketing communications. There should be another 3 Ps. So what he's trying to do is say, let's not focus on creativity at the expense of the strategic role of marketing within a business, and marketing is a business discipline, not a sort of colouring in exercise. So it's a I think we can all get behind that. Obviously, he's trying to frame it in a certain way. I think we would also argue there's a role for creativity in the other bits of the other 3 Ps. So it's whether you see creativity as being just basically a form of advertising, or everything else. So we might have a slightly different view, but I think his overall message, which is marketing should be rooted in the business and where the business needs to go, and then everything else should flow from that. I think we should all.
I was going to say it's hard not to get behind that,
exactly.
Because that is, I think that's the problem when we fall back into, look, advertising, great fun, right? Let's not deny that, but it has to be part of the bigger picture, and being more impactful as marketers is how we can have the better conversations with CFOs and CEOs, and that's always like we always get that. Oh, the CEO and the CFO, like I don't think. Probably wildly, statement to make to say no CFO and CEO doesn't want marketing, but I think what they don't. It's that they don't want something that's not going to help grow the business. So if you talk about it in those terms, you're more likely to get the support.
Yeah, and it's about. So we've just been working with an agency called Transmission that is in the B2B space, and I wrote a forward for a white paper they're about to release. And it's really interesting because, again, it's talking about creating the boardroom-ready CMO. And I think it's a sort of recognition that what gets you to the CMO job might not necessarily be the same as what gets you to the boardroom job. And there is a sort of shift in mindset that takes you from one to the next one. And I think everyone has to go through that process. No matter whether you're in the chief digital officer or chief, everyone has to go through that process. But I think it's that realization of how do marketers translate what they've done and the success they've done into that sort of business language that has to worry about cash flow and has to worry about corporate reputation as well as brand. Yeah,
it's Mark Sands talked to me about that. He said, the further along he got in his career, the further down the P&L into the balance sheet he went. And that's the evolution, and that's where we need to get to. Listen, outside of kind of all the amazing work content that's going to be here this week, anything else that you're going to catch? Do you know? Will you have time?
Don't have a lot of time. I've made a small window of time that I've just used up to go and see Eric Cantona, who is my childhood footballing idol. So that's the one thing for me this week. No, it's largely we're in and around the Palais. So we're not in sessions. We're recording podcasts. or going out and meeting people. There's one thing I'm quite interested in is all the stuff about humour. There's quite a lot of bits and pieces going on around the festival around humour, so I'm going to be catching some of that. And I'm going to be trying to avoid AI talk because there'll be a lot of it, and most of it will be at a very generic level. But I'm dare say there'll be some good stuff there. And then I think that's me. Like, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing how quickly the week goes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're in sort of Friday and you go, oh, okay. What just happened?
Yeah. Well, I had like FOMO before I got here, because it's just, you look at all the events, all the speakers, you're going like, how am I going to get to? But it's about capturing as much as we can, and then speaking to people who are seeing other things.
Exactly. And I think like you cannot do Cannes without missing 50 different things you'd like to be in, and it's like, I've always sort of thought of it as it's called a festival, and it is like going to Glastonbury or Coachella or something. There's always 20 bands you can't see that you would have liked to. You've just got to try and choose your own adventure, pick what makes sense to you, talk to other people, and sort of really get the most out the week you can.
Well, listen, David, thanks a million for stopping by. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Nice. Thanks for having me.
Well, very interesting insights there from David, and lots happening at WARC. And look, as you could tell from that interview, I'm a huge fan of WARC, the content that they have. And look, we even have access to WARC. They have the WARC podcast. So what else did you get to see today?
Well, the one big thing, and I put it up on LinkedIn earlier on, the one big thing that's super noticeable, and we touched on it last night in our first sort of initial review, is all the retail media networks in the US, the big retailers. Now, if you're looking in, say, from the UK, you're looking from Ireland or Australia, it would be quite weird for you to see Tesco have a big stand at a trade show, or to see, say, in Ireland, the Dunnes Stores have a big trade show. Well, right behind us, within 300 metres of where we're standing right now, the major US retailers have huge stands. So Albertsons are just that way. Roundel, we are Target's media agency. Kroger, it goes on. Instacart are not quite, they're a marketplace, they're about 20 metres from where we are right now. And that's a huge sea change from even 2 years ago when I was here the first time. Just quite incredible that the retailers are taking stands at a place 5,000 miles away from where they live.
And it's amazing, obviously people are pouring out of the festival at the moment, and somehow don't see a camera right in front of it, but sure, we'll forgive them.
Well, mostly I think they're just taking pictures of us. But the other thing is, Connor, is the announcements are coming thick and fast. So it's kind of like a tech festival in that context, tech show in that context today. So even today, Instacart did an announcement of a partnership with YouTube. Amazon advertising partnership with Omnicom Group to share data. CVS, the huge, like 9,000 stores, pharmacy chain in the US, did a partnership with Trade Desk to share audience as well. It's just among many partnerships announced today.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I still haven't had a chance to go see the work. I'm definitely going to try go see the work over the next couple of days. I did get to go to the Contagious WARC line session on lifelong learning, where Karen Nelson Field was, James Herman and Marcus Collins. Marcus was actually stuck in Rome, so he had to record something. But they were kind of talking about some of the things that they kind of wanted to change and see, and things we need to be doing better in the industry. Marcus was talking about the need for more empathy. He talked about culture. James Herman, he went into his kind of three things. One, he had big pop at Scott Galloway and his episode. So I'm going to talk to James later in the week, and we'll get more into that. He talked about the skeptical hippo, which I kind of liked. He didn't have the reverse of a skeptical hippo, but really that was about how do we convince non-marketers of the job to be done by marketers, and it's not by trying to market to them. It's not trying to be creative with them. He also talked about having fun. That came up with a few other people I spoke to today. Like, this is not just Cannes. This job is a lot of fun. It should be a lot of fun. And when we stop having fun, I think we stop doing great marketing.
If he's having so much fun, how come his bank account isn't as big as Scott Galloway's? That's what I was saying to. So whenever anybody goes and says Scott Galloway is useless, I say check Scott Galloway's bank account and say see who's winning.
Who's having the fun?
Who's having the fun here?
Yeah.
If that's not the ultimate, arbiter, it might be
Maybe it's
the
not,
ultimate,
though.
but it's a pretty good arbiter who's having the fun.
And then, so Karen Elsevier, she is launching her latest book. I'm going to talk to her about
Excellent.
that. It's like her
fantastic, yeah.
greatest hits. That's what I'm calling it. I don't think she's calling it that. And of course, when she was in Dublin, she said she would exclusively launch the book with me here at Cannes. I said that. She didn't say that at all. So, but we are going to have a conversation.
Like it was the voices in her head.
It was my voice.
Oh, the voice in your head. Sorry.
Yeah. But one thing Karen said that was interesting is that we've transitioned to machine potentially too fast, and the need for the human to be involved. So it was kind of an interesting perspective because, look, her tools definitely use technology, but she's saying, like, let's not forget the role of human in everything that we do. So really interesting session, and obviously they were talking about kind of lifelong learning and things that they've learned along the way. So it was great to see those people and their insights. I have some amazing meetings tomorrow. As I say, Karen Nelson Field. I'm going to meet with John Lombardo, who people will know from the B2B Institute, but he's gone out and himself and Pete have created a new product,
Excellent.
Evidenza. And they try to find as many things that can rhyme with Evidenza as possible. But after that, then I'm going to head back to RTL Ad Alliance Beach. There's some great sessions tomorrow, so really looking forward to that. How about you?
Tomorrow I'm doing a keynote at the Sainsbury's Nectar 360.
I'm going to miss that.
Which I've paid you to stay away from. And I'm introducing some of my new stuff into that, so that's going to be quite fun. Also going to meet with the big boss of the largest retailer in Australia called 360. Also, I'm meeting with Glanbia tomorrow, and their head out of the US, who runs all their online business as well. So it's going to be a very interesting day, to say the least. And I have to prep for my presentation on Wednesday, which apparently now it's confirmed that I'm competing directly with some guy called Elon Musk.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Never heard of him. Doesn't like advertising.
He doesn't like advertising, and it doesn't sound like a winner to me. He's never going to create anything.
Never. Elon, come talk to us. That's going to be a great day. Of course, then there is the IAPI lunch tomorrow, so all the Irish delegates are going to be getting together and kind of celebrating all things great about Irish advertising, creativity, marketing. So really looking forward to catching up with a load of people. I actually haven't seen that many Irish people around. Well, I've mostly been locked away in the press centre, so maybe that's why. Look, in other news as well, obviously this is a festival of creativity, and we mentioned there was over 20,000 entries to the festival. As we are recording here live, and right now the awards are being announced, and some great news for Irish creativity that the Thinkhouse and Publicis have won with their campaign with Heineken Pub Museum.
Superb result.
Phenomenal.
Great result all around for Irish creativity.
We were talking yesterday about getting shortlisted is phenomenal, getting a bronze or a silver, but to get a gold, phenomenal work by the guys there. So massive congratulations. So we've just been joined by Yakira from Ad Monsters, who has arrived today at the festival, and part of this is getting out the message of what other people have enjoyed about the festival, not just Connor and Colin. So Yakira, what have you enjoyed about Cannes so far?
So I just got here a few hours ago. What I loved most was the Integral Ad Science panel. It was called She Runs It panel, and it was a lot of female executives talking about how they were able to climb the corporate ladder and reach their level of success.
Amazing. Well, I didn't see that, but it sounds fantastic. And do you know who was on the panel?
It was the CEO of IAS. It was a woman from the New York Times.
Amazing. Well, what a great way to start. And you're here for the whole week?
I am. I'm moderating a panel tomorrow for YieldMo. So
what's the topic?
Free. AI, elevating AI, leveraging AI in ad tech, advertising technology.
AI is the hot topic this year, Cam. Well, listen, thank you so much for dropping by, having a word with That's What I Call Marketing, and we will take your photo beside the Cannes line sign now. Okay, well listen, that's it for this episode and our daily roundup, and Colin's back for this bit.
And it's a good night from me.
And it's a good night from him. Thanks a million.